Okay, now of course if you're anything like me, you've downloaded all 7 of the Wandroid games and are prepared to play all 7 of them. Just kidding. Anyway, I put them together in a group on my phone, so I have them all together. And I wanted to show you, before I showed you wandering off into the dungeon, I wanted to show you one last thing from the first video that I forgot. And if we could give the screen a moment to come up, that is creating an Alchemist. So we're going to come up with a name for our Alchemist, and we're going to call him... What are we going to call our Alchemist? What shall we name him? Let's go with... What would you call an Alchemist? No, Paracelsus won't fit. I've already tried that. Let's go with Percodan. Because it works. Okay, we're going to go with male, neutral. Let's try making him a hobbit and get that high score. There's an 18, that'll do. Okay, intelligence has to be, and is it agility or dexterity? Must be agility then. There it is. Okay, now I've just shown you by accident how to create a bard. But, yes, bard is the one that can play musical instruments, and the musical instruments cast spells. About as good a fighter as a thief, but the only one that can play musical instruments that cast spells. Alchemist is the one that learns the hurt over time spells. So let's go ahead, and of course, as usual, they are wussy like a mage. So let me not make that quite so high. We'll go to 10. And we'll take this down 1 point. Bring that up to 10. And that's good. Okay, so now we have created a Alchemist. Like I said, Alchemists learn these spells that do the hurt over time thing, and they're actually kind of useful in the later part of the dungeon. As I've mentioned before, I've already played this game all the way through, so I do know somewhat what I'm getting into. I just wanted to have footage of myself doing all this stuff, because eventually I'm going to just make a video of the highlights, and I'm just going to use all these gameplay footages edited down for that purpose. So let's go and build our party. Right now we're just going to start with the basics, the 3 fighters, a thief, a priest, and a mage. I call him a mage, he's a wizard, but you know, it's because of the original game. Now let's go and save, because we created a new character. We have to save before we forget. And into the maze. Now we're all equipped with basically a weapon and armor, and right now that's it. You can go to camp by hitting cancel, and I can't move myself any higher than that. I think I need to put myself down here. You still have 290 gold left. We have no materials. Our playtime is 27 seconds. That's because we just arrived. But important things to note. You can reorder your party in case you build your party outside of the sequence that you want to play with. Go ahead and go into the dungeon, go to camp, and you can resequence your party as you see fit. You can search the block that you're in. It doesn't search all visible space. It just searches the block you're in. So, for example, if you disband, or if you leave a player somewhere in the dungeon, if you can't afford to heal them, and you go back to that location, that address in the dungeon, you'll be able to search and find that party member if you go with a party that has a spot to spare. There are important things to consider. You could also have them quit the party. You can also save while you're in the dungeon. Something that was unheard of in the original game. You literally had to exit the dungeon every time you went in. Because if you died in the dungeon, or if you stopped playing in the dungeon, your party would be lost in the dungeon. And I don't remember if it was guaranteed that they would be in the location where they were last at. So, there's that to fuss about. But here, in this game, you can save wherever you are in the dungeon, and at the main menu, back at the town, there is a feature where you can resume the game. So, we move to the dungeon, and eventually there's going to be mapping spells. The monster surprised you. And then, of course, you have to go through their attack. And then, over here on the... Let me move my picture up here. Over here on the right, you see here's your options in the interaction. Each player is going to... or each character is going to have an option in the fight. The first three can fight. If you have weapons, you can fight in the second row. But you can also parry, which basically means block whatever attack. And usually that results in a weaker hit. You don't get to hit the monsters will hit you, and you won't get damaged as much. You can cast spells, you can use an item, like for example scrolls, or the bard can use a musical instrument, which will cast a spell. You can run, you can leave. I forgot to plug the microphone in again. Okay, hang on a second. Here I have the... I keep forgetting where the camera lens actually is. Pardon me, this is going to be a bit weird. Okay, is that better? I can talk quieter now, I don't have to raise my voice. Anyway, so, there may be sometimes more than one group of monsters, but right now there's only one. And this here shows you how many of the monster you have, and how many are capable of fighting. I keep forgetting, I have to lean my hand forward to be seen. So there's 2 fighters, and they're both active. And I forgot to show you the things. This shows your alignment and your class. This is your armor class, which shows how well protected you are against attack. This is your current number of hit points, and this is your max hit points for each character. And what is that? Interruption time. Phone is freaking out because I'm draining the battery. Okay, so anyway, so we're in an encounter, and you can control your actions by pressing up or down, your decisions of what to do, and we're basically just all going to fight. For one thing, our magical characters have not learned enough magic yet. I'm just going to put myself over the cancel button. Because basically, there's a feature where you can set it to scroll through these notifications at a slow rate or fast rate, if you don't want to pay attention, or just for the mere fact of fight. Now notice how it shows your chosen action here. Kill one of them, kill the second one. And you get 18 experience and 28 gold. And also sometimes, although not in this case, sometimes you get materials out of the dungeon. Actually, it's from the monsters. But that's an important feature that I'm later going to describe to you. But right now, it's just not important. Just don't worry about needing to pick up. Yes, I forgot to tell you. With doors, you have to hit OK to kick through them. You can press up to move through open passages. But when you come to a door, you have to kick it open. And here there is a statue of the old man in a room. This is the thing where I forgot to warn you. Sometimes the grammar in this game is pretty damn bad. But anyway, it's a Japanese translation done by the developer. So don't forget, I usually just hit OK to move through the dungeon. It doesn't have any different effects than hitting up, except for when you're at a door. This, I think, is the room where... Oh, an important thing to remember, when you are finally getting to the point of being able to map the dungeon, no, I'm not going to go in that room yet, because there's something important that you're going to need to learn in that room, and I don't want to spoil it for you yet. Okay, so when you're going through the dungeon, unlike the pixel dungeon games and other type games that you've had, in order to map out the entire dungeon, you have to actually step on every tile in the dungeon. I mean, yes, it is literally a square tile of each location in the dungeon. It's not like one of these coordinates can be vague. They're not. They are specifically squares of the entire space your whole party is standing in. So in order to fully map out the dungeon, you have to step on every single square. And there are mapping spells that you can both buy and learn, but realistically, you just have to go out in the dungeon, fight monsters, in order to get enough gold to buy scrolls, buy better armor, get loot, yes. So it's just a matter of going out in the dungeon and getting into several fights. Cancel. Let's go over here. And you have to just do it repeatedly to level up your characters, because they have to level up enough to be able to take stronger monsters that you can meet further down the dungeon. But right now, you're just trying to learn your way around. And by the time you get to the point of having to go on into lower parts of the dungeon, you're going to be much more familiar with the map. That is one thing that I remember wondering about with this game, was the problem of it being just a wireframe interface, nothing but lines to show the contours of what the environment looks like, and how you could possibly remember always save when you come out of the dungeon before you do anything else. Unless you just don't want whatever happened to be retained. If you saved before going into the dungeon, and the only thing that you got significant was one of your characters killed, and you don't want the game to remember that, then just don't save, exit the game, and then go back in and build your party again with that guy not dead. Anyway, but I wanted to comment on how you can recognize the dungeon. After a certain number of times going through it, you will begin to remember the path you took to get somewhere, because the developer has been very careful to make sure that every single part of the dungeon is, in fact, unique. There's only occasions where there's a repetitious feel to the environment. I know in Wandroid number 1, there's an entire floor where every room is shaped exactly the same, with the same hallways around it, so that you literally just have to remember where you are. There's also a spell called Direction that will show coordinates of where in the dungeon you are. So in case you've actually mapped out or printed out a picture of your map, so that you can look at this piece of paper that you got and tell where you are based on the coordinates, and knowing what direction you are. By the way, the direction spell shows direction in Japanese characters, not east, west, north, south. But you are going to end up being able to get familiar with the characters so you can tell which one is telling you what. But to get back to the game, no more diversions here. The first thing you want to do when you get back from a quest in the dungeon, not a quest, but a trip to the dungeon, is go to the Adventurer's Inn. And as you see, they don't list the prices here, but stables are free. Cots are, I think, I forget how much gold it is for everyone to sleep in cots. Economy rooms are a bit more expensive than the cots. Merchant suites are more expensive than the economy rooms, and royal suites are the most expensive. The reason for this is that sleeping in these better rooms heals your characters faster. So, for example, Queequeg here is down to 15 of 23 health points, and Stig Tilly's down to 13 of 19. So I need to put them into better rooms so that they can recuperate and they'll earn their hit points back. But once your priest learns the healing spells, you won't need to spend money at the Adventurer's Inn anymore, and it'll be better because, again, you need to save up your gold in order to buy loot, or no, buy better armor, better equipment, and eventually lunches at the lunch counter. I'll show you that in a little bit. And no, you're not going to need anything at the blacksmith shop because that's all free based on the materials you get from the dungeon. Anyway, so whenever you come back from the dungeon, go to all stables, and this will put all your characters sleeping in the stables. Press OK for each one. It'll tell you how much more experience you need to level up. For right now, because we've all been in the same party and we've all had the same fights, all the fighters are going to need the same amount of experience to grow. Thief is going to need 39, 49, and 54. And if I had put go to Cots, Queequeg, and I remember in the original computer game, it would actually count up the healing points. So you could stay in like a few nights instead of the entire time it takes to completely heal up. Or you could stay in the entire time. Yeah, see here it's just a one hit. You go in there, you're staying long enough to heal up. Unless maybe it's just they needed that few amount of healing points. Let's go back to Gilgamesh and see what we got. Did we get any loot? No, we did not. Okay, I am going to real quickly show you something, an interesting feature. Okay, we want to remove a member. We're going to remove our wizard. Add a member. And inspect. Now, if you'll notice, one thing unique on this Sage's menu is just above equip. He can identify. We don't have any loot to identify right now, but if you found something in the dungeon, the game would give you a description of unknown this, unknown that, unidentified or whatever. Sometimes it'll be a sword, sometimes it'll be just armor, sometimes it'll be just a hat or a helm, but it won't tell you what type. From the very beginning, the bishop, or not the bishop, but the sage can identify loot. And if you made your luck high enough, which is something I made a point of doing, then he'll be better at it. It takes a lot of luck to be able to identify equipment. So he's going to be pretty darn good at it from the get-go. After a certain number of levels, I think it's at level 5, he's going to be able to inspect items. Tell you certain things about them, like who can equip them. Sometimes it's class specific, sometimes it's, actually most of the time it's class specific. Certain weapons that only fighters can equip, but not thieves or priests or mages. Some things that everybody can equip. Some things that are specific weapons for the ranger or the lord or the samurai. If I remember from the first time I played the game, there was a really badass crossbow that was good for the ranger. Hit extremely hard, And also for the samurai, there's a sword that you can craft that was really a badass sword, but it was only equipable by the samurai. And what else? But anyway, so not only can he tell you who can equip it, sometimes they're alignment specific, sometimes they're race specific, sometimes they're gender specific, um, and sometimes they're also race specific. Um, but also he's able to inspect it for how strong it is. You have to remember also that the way that weapons and armor are rated, I don't know about the armor. No, the armor is just rated in terms of how much negative armor class it gives you. But the weapons are rated in terms of how well they hit in terms of dungeon dice. And you have to remember, like if you had a D20, I mean, granted, it'd be nice if you could get a weapon that could hit like a D20. Let's say you have a D6. D6 is a six-sided die. You can roll a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or a 6. So you have a range of values between 1 and 6. Sometimes you'll get a weapon that's a 2d6, meaning it's like rolling 2d6 die, and you can get anything between 2 and 12. So get to know Snort Kitty. Get to know how to think in terms of the roll of die, because that's how your armor is going, or your weapons are going to be rated in this game. And armor is going to be rated in terms of how much it lowers your armor class. Other things that he's not going to be able to identify that stuff at level 5. That I think starts at level 10. So again, you need to make sure and get your bishop leveled up rather quickly so that he or she can inspect the loot that you get from the dungeon in addition to being able to identify it. Because again, you want to be able to tell who can equip it without having to just put it in everybody's backpack and just say, well, can you equip it? Oh no, okay, move it to this guy. Can he equip it? Oh no, let's move it to this guy. Can he equip it? Oh no, let's move it to this female character. Can she equip it? You know, instead of doing that, you just get a bishop or a sage that can inspect items, and it'll come up with a whole screen that'll tell you augmentations on it, how hard it's supposed to be rated, what kind of weapon it is, what kind of armor it is, and the ratings on how hard it hits or how hard it protects. So, very important.